beetles, ants, Jiminy Cricket, prawns, the hive mind, Hollow Knight, the Queen of Blades, gorillas. Wait, what? Let's talk about Umber Hulks. Well, not quite Umber Hulk. This is going to be a little different than my normal episodes. While I do want to talk about Umber Hulks as a playable race, I also want to talk about something similar but not quite the same. So let's take a look at the Trox, and while we're at it, let's also throw in the Ankheg. Ankhegs? Hokages. Let's just throw them in there for good measure. Trox, Ankheg, and Umber Hulks all spawn from the same base concept, giant rampaging bugs. If we go all the way back to first edition, we see Umber Hulks as large, monstrous insect creatures, Ankhegs as also large, monstrous insectoid creatures, and Trox, while from Pathfinder, are large, monstrous creatures. So just to clarify, they are indeed large, insectoid-like, monstrous, gorilla-type creatures? That's what the book says. I don't know, Umber Hulks are weird. Either way, these aren't just like the starting area bug-type Pokemon that you bump into in the world. These are very much world-ending Godzilla bugs, and should be nightmare fuel for any pest exterminator or zookeeper. Because of the gorilla thing, I guess. It's going to be a weird one today, because of their monstrous angle. Monstrous angle. It's like 66 degrees, or like 1.15 radians. I don't know, they're monsters. Fear the math. That's such a stupid joke. I believe that the Trox from Pathfinder really are a rather successful attempt at playing one of these scyther-like beasts of destruction without dumbing them down too much, like they do with so many of the other monster races. First and foremost, while the Umber Hulks have somewhat of a gorilla-type body, more in their bulk and the shape of their body, they are still very insectoid, and they have a proclivity for grabbing people, throwing people, and just kind of generally mucking things about and confusing the hell out of people. Trox, on the other side, will still have the obsessive interest in the grabby-grabby and the tossy-tossy of terrified adventurers, tend to be more on the insect side of life, which includes the addition of specialized arms designed for grabbing. While mechanically this is definitely a huge boon, which makes them very capable as an enemy, makes them very capable as enemies as well as NPCs. It's not actually the most interesting thing about them. And then on the far end of the spectrum, we have the Ankheg, which are basically pure bug. Like, these would be the most bug-like of the three creatures we're talking about. And that includes things like the chitinous armor, bite, and claw attacks. Super cool. So before we get into all that, let's go ahead and talk about the stats. I guess we'll go ahead and just burrow right in. That was a StarCraft joke. Let's just go ahead and get back to the stats. So even though we're talking about three different monstrous races, we really do want to boil these down to the same stats. And that's why I've clumped these three together in the same video, which really means a massive bonus to strength, starting with a +4 to strength. And if they are a large creature in Pathfinder, they get an additional +2, which gives them +6 to strength. And you know what? I'm totally okay with that. There would be an argument for going strength and constitution, but I really think a lot of that comes from the monster manual actually giving them monster levels. That's right, Umber Hulks in 5th edition are actually like level 10-ish. Ankhegs are like level 6, and Trox, well, they're player race, so they just really start at level 1. That could explain their bonuses to Constitution. For the most part, depending on how buggy you want them to be, you should also give them negatives to Wisdoms or Intelligence. Wisdom or Intelligence. And that goes for most of the monster races. If you want to take full bonuses to Strength and Constitution, then I would take some of the monster levels. Start your character at level 10 with all the feats and alike, and then start building your adventure. What did you decide to roll? Oh, well, I've multi-classed a level 5 Dwarf Barbarian with 5 levels in Bard. What did you? Oh, well, I'm an Umber Hulk with 6 levels of Crab Demon and 4 levels of Paladin. For the hive! I don't think Umber Hulks have hives. Either way. So unless you really want to gain access to those monster feats like multi-attack, bonus constitution, I think you're better off just roll the PC and keep 1 or 2 of the cool traits that you like from those bug classes, and then just start adding your class levels on top of it. That's really why I'm not super amped up about giving both the strength and the constitution. I used to like to go with something of the rule of 2s. If you want a +2 to 1 stat, that's no issue. But if you want anything beyond that, you start taking negatives and other stats. Double so for stacking the same stat. So with +4 strength and +2 constitution, you'd really be looking at negatives to int and wisdom and charisma. And this is how we see the Trox set up in Pathfinder. So with 5e, I would just take +4 to strength and maybe a negative to wisdom, and then just roll the bones. Like, let it go and see what happens. Aside from the stats, each of these creatures is large. Are large? Is large or are large? They're big creatures. And for some reason, every homebrew I can find online for running one of these beastly beetly boys runs them as a medium creature. Hold on a minute. Let me go ahead and get my soapbox real quick. Test. Is this thing on? Okay. If you're gonna play a monstrous creature, you gotta play him large. Play him large! Now that I've gotten that out of the way. This is where these creatures get some of their most unique play from. They are large, they have reach, so them all being kind of specialized towards grapple makes a lot of sense, which is really cool. And in Pathfinder, it's a lot more mechanical than just saying, oh, you have advantage on grapples. You have advantage on giraffes. Oh boy, grapples, which could be the case for, any Goliath or grapple barbarian. So giving them all the advantages of being a large creature really fits towards how they were designed to be played. And yes, that's mostly supposed to be as a monster, but as a player race, it still works. The main reason I chose to talk about all three of these races today is because they really do all fit nicely together into this monstrous insectoid group. We basically need to look at it as a spectrum of more insect versus more humanoid. And that's really all there is to these post-murder bugs. Can I say that on YouTube? Better bleep it anyways. They all have their own unique abilities based on their morphology, and like the Trox, who have 6 limbs, might be better equipped to use things like weapons and tools that are more fitted for humanoids or less monstrous creatures. Ankhegs are example. Did I mention that Trox have 6 arms? Really weird. Ankhegs, for example, get access to breath weapons once per 6 rounds, shooting 30-foot line of acid from their dripping mandibles. You could drop this down to the same as like the draconic breath weapons, where it's once per short rest and then you gain more later on the levels, but I don't see the need to do that because of reasons I'll explain later on. Speaking of mandibles, did I mention that they get a bite attack? Does 2d6 points of damage and a free grapple. That's pretty awesome. It does state that they can't shoot the acid if they do have something grappled in their maw, but I might overlook that on the occasion that it's necessary to melt a goblin's face or two. Goblin soup, don't even need a cup. You just chomp, chomp, sizzle, sizzle, go. That's it. Ankheg, super good at eating goblins. Probably not going to make that a Campbell's flavor, but who knows. The Trox, on the other hand, are also crazy good at grappling. 4 of their 6 arms, while not large enough to carry weapons, are specially designed for the aid in grappling. To me, that means a large bonus if you're going to be playing Pathfinder, or constant advantage for grappling in D&D. The other benefit is that I would argue that they can keep their main hands free for attacks and defense while grappling, and that's a huge boon for combat and allows for a lot more tactical momentum. I think I just made up that term right there. Tactical momentum. I'm going to go with it. The Trox overall are a little overpowered and should really be played with an experienced player or DM. It's really easy to just become a rampaging juggernaut without much effort. The Umber Hulks on the other side are somewhat in a weird place as being mostly insect and also not human. Some kind of like insect gorilla hybrid. That makes them kind of fun. They can get natural armor, more on that in a minute, but they also get access to both claw attacks and a bite attack. I would argue that they should get advantage on grappling as well because they are, I was going to say bulky, but maybe girthy. They're big, giant gorilla monsters. I don't know how you would describe that better. They don't get it naturally on each attack like the Ankheg would. They do, however, get a confusing gaze. And I'm not sure if that's because they look weird, because you're surprised that a 9-foot-tall gorilla bug just came in out of the ground and started trying to eat your breakfast. It's like camping, but the bears and the bugs are the same issue. Having a passive Confucian gaze every time you look at something could be really good in combat, and possibly not so great when you're trying to, buy new armor. Maybe you need a pair of sunglasses like Cyclops from X-Men, or, to stop eye-donking people and shopkeepers and vendors and NPCs. Also, as a DM, you might just want to have a bunch of dice ready to roll every time you enter combat or the mall. It's going to be crazy. That's all I'm saying. It's going to be weird. Did I mention the burrowing yet? Because that, in my opinion, is one of the coolest things about all 3 of these races. Not only do you get tremor sense and dark vision to a varying degree, but they all have burrow speed. Large creatures with a burrow speed. That's right. We're doing Tremors campaign. And one of you has to be Bert. You have to figure that out before we play. Burrowing is one of the most annoying and amazing skills in the game. I really want players to, play with it. I think it's great. I tend to be really relaxed about burrowing, but I do apply some rules to it. Things like large stone floors and walls can't be burrowed through, although the Umber Hulk says specifically that it can because it is so beefy and awesome. And that's a boon for them. Stony ground or man-made walls slow you down, but absolutely burrow through them. And while you're burrowing, your ability to communicate with the party is heavily hampered. But having the ability to dig through walls and destroy ground, or just shoot up from the ground and pull a goblin unexpectedly away from the group, mwah, mwah. I realize now this is an audio medium and you can't see me making the chef kissy face like the Swedish chef would do. Kissy noises. I love that guy. And now that you've kind of heard about what makes them really strong as players, as player characters, here's how we keep them from breaking. Some of the downsides in my mind are their carapaces, or their chitin, chichai coffee grounds. No armor is kind of where I'm going with this. While the Trox don't get a natural armor bonus like the Umber Hulks and the Ankheg do, I think that makes it a good spectrum. With the Trox being closest to humans, allowing them to wear armor and clothing with modification or specially made is basically their boon versus not having the acid breath or the ability to dig through anything. While I would say that the Umber Hulks, since they do gain a slight armor bonus, they might be able to find armor or have it struggle to like have it custom made. Whereas the Ankheg, being the least like humans and having the largest armor bonus of +4, basically can't wear armor, period. I think this is similar to how turtles have their shells, where they can gain bonuses for being in their shell and they get a passive bonus. It's just general protection, and that's good enough. And I think with the Ankheg specifically, maybe that's something you can then spend feats later to get spiked armor and or reflective armor, something very similar to the An Umber Hulk type characters from Warcraft. By the book, that would give them an AC of 14, and I would argue with your DM, maybe not argue, but definitely have a discussion about whether or not you can apply your dexterity modifier to that. I could see very agile bugs being very terrifying. And that's a really fun way to go with them. While I will, for most players, say that some magical items can be worn and modified, or like rings and belts can be fit to any class or size, I think this kind of restriction can make up for players being these monstrous races. They get a really good boon early on, and then finding equipment is going to be more difficult for them, especially with the Ankheg. The type of weapons available should be heavily restricted because they do not have normal limbs. You can, however, find different ways to augment your claws and your bite, maybe by strapping a shield on or something, or a crossbow, sure. There are discussions you should have with your DM about this, looking for fun ways to experiment and really explore the idea of why this crazy bug monster decided to go adventuring. I think this is really where I like to spend my time creating characters. Sometimes it's just fun to screw around and say, well, I'm going to be an Umber Hulk. Find the limitations of the character is just as fun as finding the optimizations for me. And that's really it for these three. If you want to be huge and get stuck in hallways and then burrow your way out of them to freedom while destroying the minds of unexpected NPCs, just minding their own business, then I think these Tremor Boys is really the best option for your next monstrous character. Just so you know, stay away from people named Bert, or make sure you deny them critical need-to-know information. Also a good option. Because really, at the end of the day, if you want to make a Zerg-type character, or possibly an Umber Hulk, or any type of Nerubians, you could definitely use any of these as your base, following the same build type and simply just swap out some of their defining traits, or whatever it is you want to specialize your character. If you really like the burrowing mechanic, but being large isn't your jam, maybe you could play as a swarm of ants, or a druid that just really likes the idea of having antenna. As for most things D&D, the possibilities are endless, and just make sure you talk with your DM, and remember to have fun. Thanks again for watching. If you do have a crazy Umber Hulk story or a Trox story or an Ankheg story, let me know. Seriously, I really want to hear about that, especially if you've played an Ankheg. I think that would be really cool. I want to know how that played out. As always, liking, subscribing, and sharing this video helps our channel out a lot. It really allows us to keep creating these cool artworks. You can check us out on Patreon if you want to download any of the art from this or other videos. You are very welcome to use these for your personal character sheets, or if you need to show off a monster or an NPC in one of your campaigns. I'm totally fine with that. We do have merch available now on our Redbubble store. I'd like to get my own website set up for that eventually, but we need to see if there is a market for it. So if you do want to buy those, or you have something you would like to see in our merch store, let us know. Share this with your friends. We're almost at 3,000 subscribers. We should be hitting that in the next few days. So if you've been a subscriber before that, you've done an amazing job. Thank you. And welcome to everyone joining. We are doing the live stream on Discord, as well as the community draw days on Fridays. So come check those out if you have the time. And as always, keep your dice on the table. I wonder if you could play a brain bug from Starship Troopers. You have like 24 int, but you can't move. Plus you have a weakness to Neil Patrick Harris. I think we all do, though. That man is a treasure. I'm doing my part. Nailed it.